Okay, yesterday, by the way, just to add one point, I saw that we mentioned that the Svardim does the thing, shh. Svardim make a shechionu at a bris, we're discussing, and Ashkenazim don't make a shechionu at a bris. But now I see that it says in Eretz Yisrael, in many places, even Ashkenazim make a shechionu on a bris. Even though there's pain of the Yanuk of the kid, but nevertheless, one second, yeah, it says, Siv Chafalef, he says like this. Okay, shechionu, some say, some don't. The Ashkenazim say it only in Eretz Yisrael, but not outside of Eretz Yisrael. And the Svardim say it even outside of Eretz Yisrael. Okay, now, when the male does the bris, so again, the male has to make a bracha. Asher k'shem mitzvah svanu al Milah. Now, there's certain bracha, there's a general interesting point. There's a discussion in the Gemara. Sometimes we say al, sometimes we say le. To give you a simple example, by tefillin, we say lehaniach tefillin. On the sharash, if you make a bracha, you say al mitzvahs tefillin. Sometimes there's a lot of brachas like this. Like you say ala milah, ala shchita. Asher Circumcision says zvanu ala chilas maror, ala chilas matzah. Sometimes the bracha like a talis, lehisatev batzitzis. You don't say al atifas sitzis. And the Rishonim, try in the Gemara, in the Rishonim, in the Gemara Psachim, say, when do you say al and when do you say le? And Taisus concludes over there that, if I remember correctly, the Ri, Rabbeinu Yitzchak, Rashi's grandson, didn't find a reason for all brachas. Why sometimes you say al, sometimes you say le, and there's a whole interesting thing. But Alter Rebbe writes, most poskim write this also. That like it says by here, what happens by mistake? The Moil is supposed to say al hamila, but he said lomo. He didn't say al, he said le instead of it. So, but the Eved Yoyaitzim, okay. For instance, if a guy makes the bracha, it says le'echol matzah instead of al achilas matzah, but the Eved Yoyaitzim the bracha because it's not that particular. So the male makes a bracha, okay? So the father stands next to the male. The father stands next to the male, makes him his representative to do the bris. The male makes up stand, like we learned yesterday, he stands when he makes the bracha la milah. And then the father right away makes the bracha, sheked shanim mitzvahs tzivanu, lehachnisei, it's interesting, not alach, not alach nosas, lehachnisei bevrisei shel Avram Avinu. Now when does the father say that bracha? So some opinions say between the cutting and the priya, which I'll explain in a second. Some say no, before the bris. Some say afterwards. There's different opinions. So whenever you do it, it's good. But the minhag is, the male makes the bracha la milah, and right away the father makes the bracha lachnisei shel bevrisei shel Avram Avinu. There's a few parts of a bris. I'm not going to get too descriptive. But when you do a bris, there's two foreskins. There's the outer foreskin, and there's the inner foreskin. The outer foreskin is thicker. So the moil basically pulls it out, and then he cuts it. Then there's a thinner membrane inside, which is the thinner ord, and that the moil doesn't cut. He pushes it back. He pushes it back. That's called priya. Priya means opening up, like we learned this morning. Priya means opening up. So he uncovers. There's a second cover. He puts that back, and that holds, and then he tapes it, and whatever it is. And then you have another very important part of the bris, which is mitzitza. Mitzitza means the moil actually, when it's in place where he did a bris, he sucks out a little bit of blood. If you don't do that, the Gemara says it's a danger, sakana. And it says a moil that doesn't do mitzitza should not be a moil. So normally in normal times and in the frum circles, they do regular mitzitza. The male does regular mitzitza. In later times, when AIDS started and then COVID started, so a lot of Milim didn't know who they're doing a bris for. It wasn't necessarily a very religious person. They don't know what it was. So they would do mitzitza with a tube, like a vacuum tube, like a medicine syringe, with a syringe. They would suck it out a little bit so they didn't get the blood in their mouth, but it at least sucked it out from that area. Sometimes the Milim they're afraid to do it, so they wanted the father of the baby to do it, which is not a good idea. Why isn't it a good idea? Because the father of the baby doesn't know what he's doing. If you don't suck out the blood the way you have to do it, you're not sucking out the blood, so then what are you doing? So there's a lot of fight about that, how mandatory mitzitza is, but mitzitza is very, very important. In fact, by benching after the Suda, you have the 6 rachamons you add in after the middle of benching by a bris milah. And it says, Im shloshela v'idase psula. If you didn't do the mitzitza, the cutting and the priya and the mitzitza, Im shlosh ela lo yasela avidase psula. It's not a kosher bris. So people have to understand that also. Another thing which is very important for people to know, and I know people will tell you, there's certain clamps you could do, but a lot of a lot of people that do bris and use clamps. What does that do? It stops the bleeding. So the people, especially if they're not from, they don't like too much blood, But according to most poskim, a clamp is not a kosher bris. You can't use a clamp by a bris. So sometimes they have a different clamp, or whatever it is. Bottom line is, you shouldn't use a clamp by a bris, and if the male is using a clamp, you should get another male. That would be a reason that even though you spoke to him before, like we said, you can tell him that you need another male. Okay, now, after you do the bris and the male bandages up the baby, by the way, another interesting thing. Some people say, that male was so quick. Yeah, he did a quick job. Being quick doesn't mean you're a good male. Because a lot of males used to do is they cut it quicker, but they didn't do a good job. They had to go back later when they bring the kid back to the mother. They have to go fix what they did. A good male knows how to cut properly and do what they need to do properly. That's why you need to have a male that's proper. That's why kids should not have a bris in the hospital. I'm talking not, God forbid, if there's a sickness that they eventually have to do a bris with a male in the hospital. But, the brisin they do in the hospital are not kosher brisin. You would need later hatafis dam bris. They would have to do a lot of bloodletting in that area to make that the kid should be considered circumcised. Okay, so then, after you do the bris, so then you have the brachas and the naming. Okay? So, there's the brachas. It's a whole long bracha. So first they start off making very priagafen. And by Yisvardim, they also make a bracha on the psamim. Izbei psamim, hatzei psamim, whatever they use. In Ashkenazic circles, we don't do that. We don't do the psamim. So you make a very priagafen, and then you say the bracha. Now sometimes the same guy could do both, the bracha and the naming. Technically, you can split it, and that's what many people do. They split, one person says the bracha, one person gives the naming. Then you have what's called sandik mu'ummad, the standing sandik, because the first sandik that holds the baby by the breast sits down. He's holding the baby on his lap. But there's another sandik that's called sandik mu'ummad, the standing sandik. What does he do? He holds the baby during the naming and the bracha. So again, you can have the same guy holding it for both. You can have two different people, depending how much you want to give kavod to. There's an interesting medrash that says that when it says at the end of Vayechi, about Yosef saw, let me get the exact pasuk, it's a very interesting pasuk. Mamish, all the way at the end of Vayichi, here, it says, Vaya Yosef le'Ephraim b'nei Shileshim. He saw 3 generations. Yosef in Mitzrayim, we have Menashe and Ephraim, he saw 3 generations. And then it says, Gam b'nei Machir ben Menashe, even the sons of Machir ben Menashe. So again, you had Yosef's son was Menashe, he had a son Machir, and these were their children. Yoldul ar Birkei Yosef, were born on Yosef's laps. Birkei Yosef literally means the lap of Yosef. So there's a medrash that says, what do you mean al Birkei Yosef? Yosef was the sandik for his great-grandchild. The knees, al Birkei Yosef. Yosef was the sandik for Menashe's grandsons. He lived a long time. Okay, but now when the male does the bracha and the bris, he shouldn't talk between the bracha and the cutting. You have to do it right away. Even if he talked is about the milah. Now, another interesting thing. What happens if there's no father there? For whatever reason. And the father normally says the bracha lachnise bevreise shel Avram Avinu. Because he says, Asher ketshanu b'mitzvayse v'tzivanu, lachnise, which is the father's obligation to bring the bris into a child. So if the father's not the moil, he can't say ala milah because he's not doing the actual cutting. But the father makes a bracha, the second bracha, lachnise b'asher ketshanu b'mitzvayse v'tzivanu, lachnise bevreise shel Avram Avinu. What happens if there's no father present at the bris? So some poskim hold you don't say the bracha at all. Because the father's bracha. There's no father, there's not. But, and the custom though is not like that. The custom is the sandik makes the bracha. The sandik is like in the place of the father helping with the actual cutting. So the father, then the sandik would make the bracha, okay, now there's another interesting thing with the bracha. It's getting late. But when the guy makes the bracha by Priagafen, and then the bracha, and then they say the naming. Do you drink the wine in between? Because the guy said by Priagafen. So does he have to drink the wine or not? So some people have a minute, the guy drinks the wine, and then sometimes after Bei Priagafen, before he says the bracha, sometimes after the bracha, sometimes after the naming, the guy will drink the wine. Technically, he doesn't have to drink the wine. Somebody else to drink. Usually the guy who makes the bracha drinks the wine. But why? Because when the rabbi marries off people, you do a chuppah. Yeah? The rabbi, even by Sfadim they do this. The rabbi says, Bei Priagafen, and the bracha shekiddish, shekidshon mitzvahs v'tzivanu ala royes, right? By a wedding. Who drinks the wine? Not the rabbi. Chassan and Kala drink the wine. So you see that you don't need that the guy that makes the bracha necessarily drinks the wine. But first of all, you give the kid a little bit to drink. But the minig is the guy that made the bracha, he was the one that drinks the wine. Even if he tries not to talk, by the way, until after the bracha and the naming, and then after the naming, he drinks the wine because he didn't talk in between the two things. When you make kiddush, somebody else is allowed to drink the wine. It's preferable the guy himself does it. But what happens if the father of the household wants to make kiddush, because it's honorable that he should do it, but he can't drink wine or grape juice. So then as long as somebody, a kid, or somebody, even a wife or a kid, drinks the wine, it's fine. In fact, that's unofficial what you do in the 9 days. Shabbos, Saturday night of the 9 days, the guy makes up the whole kid drinks the wine. We're not so makbid in it, but the Rebbe, they were makbid in 770 at least. They were very makbid in it. That a kid drinks the wine. What? What? A bris? You want the baby to drink start him young. No, a bris and wedding you need to have wine or grape juice. Preferably wine. So yeah, technically somebody could make a bracha for you, but the minig by a bris, the guy who makes the bracha drinks the wine. But by Kiddush, if you can't drink the wine, you can give it to a kid over the chinuch age. Or a woman is allowed to drink the wine. Yeah. You have to.